As I'm finishing up my undergrad degree as an honor student in political science, I've taken some time to really reflect on the things I learned throughout my university career, things that I didn't really fully realize that I was learning until I look back in retrospect. And that's often how things go in life. We don't really realize that we've come across certain lessons and learned and adapted them until we look back and we realize the small changes we made in improving ourselves, or sometimes in regressing and becoming a worse version of ourselves, like falling into bad habits. Now, 3 tips, 3 lessons that, and even 3 words of advice I could offer for anyone who is thinking about going into university or is in university right now. The best tips I can offer you are as follows. Number 1 is to genuinely pursue the truth at all costs, no holds barred, do not compromise. What this includes is you have to understand that most of the beliefs that you've been taught by other people and that you've internalized and are probably living in more ways than you realize, a lot of that is garbage. A lot of that is not serving you. A lot of that is holding you back. A lot of that is designed to make you a weaker man. And you have to start to discard these beliefs. And in order to do that, you need to really humble yourself, and you need to open yourself up to the truth. Don't open yourself up to anything. That doesn't mean you go and experiment with bad ideas, because most ideas are bad ideas. You need to start at the roots, at the foundation. And I'll tell you exactly how I went about doing that myself. So for me, I really fell away from my Christian background in middle school and high school, and I considered to be myself an atheist or agnostic at best, because these are questions that I didn't fully know how to answer, but I didn't really care. So I kind of just let it be, and I didn't really want to think about it until I was at an age where I was more wise and more in tune with myself to answer these questions. However, now this is high school Adam that thought that. In university, one of the things that really began to startle and bother me is there are so many people with different opinions and different ways of living their life and with different perspectives. And these people are so convinced that their way of living, their way of thinking, their way of doing things is the right way. And I thought, well, how could that be? Isn't it the case that we're all different, so whatever you think or I think is equally as good? But then I thought, well, hold on, that doesn't make sense, because a lot of people are narcissistic. A lot of people don't have good ideas. They either tell me things are good, which I know from experience that are not good, or they just live lives and purport to want to share that with others, yet they're miserable people. And that's when I really began to wonder, okay, what makes a good person, objectively? What makes a good person? We know that there's good and bad people, but what's the criteria? How do you know if someone's good? Is someone good if they give back to others, but at the same time they are a rapist or a murderer? That's something to think about. You know, they're good 95% of the time, but they make that one massive mistake. Does that make them a bad person? And I mean, this is only scratching the surface, but long story short, in asking these questions and in learning to, without even knowing it, in learning to ask the right questions, that is where the genuine pursuit of truth began for me. And ultimately, I got really into philosophy because philosophy teaches how to live. It teaches what is a good life. And I started with Stoic philosophy. I was really drawn to the work of Marcus Aurelius. I encountered his work through a movie, actually. I wish I remembered the name of the film. But it was a film about a father who was trying to protect his wife and his daughter. And throughout the film, at key points, the film would kind of black out and it would show a quote of Marcus Aurelius. And I thought, wow, this is really practical wisdom. And so I ended up researching and acquiring the book Meditations. And that really shook my world. Seeing just how practical this stuff was, and not only just reading it, but reading it and directly going out and applying this. My life improved substantially because the stuff speaks for itself. I mean, I could quote for days the work in Meditations, and there's a lot of good wisdom in there. So I decided that if I want to live right, if I want to live a good life and be content and satisfied with what I have, but at the same time driven by my masculine energy and really motivated to be a conductor for good in the world and an instrument for good, that philosophy is the place to start. Later on, I would say after about 1 year of really delving into philosophy and making that a real priority of learning and applying constantly by reading Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Socrates, that's when I realized this is good, but it's missing something. What they're saying is totally true and totally applicable, and it will change your life if you really put the effort in to apply these things, but it's not everything. And even though what they say is true and there is wisdom there, it really is missing something greater. And one of the things I noticed is they often talk about the gods. And I can't relate to that because I've never believed in any pantheistic religion. And I believe that any pagan religion like that is absurd and comical. I don't really put serious stock into that, so I don't find it relatable. And all of a sudden, when I was learning about ancient Rome, so I was learning about the empire, the Roman Empire, and all the emperors in university, and this is about my second year, and the professor was talking about the ministry of Jesus Christ and the founding of the Catholic Church. And this was startling for me, but not at the same time. I was already at a point where I discarded most of my beliefs as being illegitimate and needing of revision. So needing to question all of my views and really ask, does this view serve me? And more importantly, is this view aligned with not only living a good life, but in accordance with truth and objective reality and objective morality, more importantly, because that's another realization I made is there's no such thing as subjective morality. Something is either right or it's wrong. And if it falls somewhere in between, it's either more right or it's more wrong. You can't have a completely neutral choice for most moral questions. Probably all moral questions. You can't have, I can't even think of an example where something would be neutral in terms of a serious moral inquiry. Now, that being said, Jesus Christ founded the Catholic Church. This was a shock for me because on the one hand, I never knew that. And I always thought of Christianity as being founded by various groups of men. You know, when I thought of the Catholic Church, I thought of the Pope and of the clergy and this massive organization, this massive institution where it never really, I grew up in a household that was very cold towards Catholicism. And so I never really gave it a second thought. I always just immediately disregarded it and thought it was hooey. It was nonsensical. It was absurd. But because I believed in God, even if I didn't want to admit it, even if I didn't have all the answers, I believed in God, and I still do believe in God, obviously. And so learning that Jesus Christ, learning about not only his ministry and the kind of man he was, but learning that this is the church he founded was groundbreaking for me, because I understand Jesus Christ to be the truth, the way, and the life. I believe that. Deep down, I know that to be true. There is absolutely no denying that, as a matter of fact. And so that's when I realized, okay, I need to seriously look into the Catholic Church. And by looking into the Catholic Church and really delving deep into studying church history and the teachings of the church, the moral teachings, how does the church answer these moral questions? That is the first time where I was exposing myself to full answers with regards to answering more deeply moral questions. And I started with reading about some of the saints and reading on some accounts of the saints, but learning about the magisterium and what the church authoritatively teaches, I found no point where I disagreed, because not only was everything so well documented and so well articulated and delivered by various church fathers, saints, martyrs, confessors, that there's nothing that even compares to this level of intellectual inquiry. And even the fact that the Catholic Church built Western civilization from the ground up after the fall of Rome and the entrance into the Dark Age, there wasn't much going for Western civilization until the spread of Christianity really took root and created strong men to build our entire civilization. And that, to me, learning all of these truths and really delving deep into it and learning to accept that authority from the church and knowing, okay, whatever I believe is probably inferior because I'm young, I'm ignorant, I don't have a good education behind me. Let's face it, the education system fails us, it fails men, and we're completely lost by the time we are done with high school. We have to figure so much out on our own. And turning to the church, where these men have spent their entire lives answering some of the most important questions that humanity has ever had to contemplate. That, to me, I don't think you can point to a better source for how to live a good life and understanding the truth. And the truth is God. So if you understand, the more you understand God, the more you understand truth. And the more you understand truth is where I think wisdom begins. So I cannot understate. You need to have a genuine pursuit of the truth. And the truth is that Jesus Christ is God. The Catholic religion is the true religion. And if you want to learn how to live a really, really meaningful, good life and share in the splendors of God's goodness, that is the end all be all. And I rest in the truth now. I still pursue aspects of the truth, but knowing that I'm trying to be a part of, I'm not yet baptized, I'm still going through catechism, but knowing that I have reached the Catholic Church, the height of truth as we know it on earth, I can rest in that fact. And I consider myself very fortunate to have allowed myself to discover that and to accept it. Now, going into the second thing that I learned through university is to become the best student in the class. This does not mean you get the best grades. Oftentimes, you're sacrificing your grades to become the best student, because the best student is not the person who can get an A+ on everything. That's the person who usually has to, at one point or another, compromise their beliefs in order to appease a professor, because some professors are admittedly quite good. They're quite objective, and they don't let their personal views get in the way of intellectual inquiry on behalf of the students. Because let's face it, a university is not there to be an indoctrination center. It sure looks like it these days, and I've been in classes where the professor absolutely believes that. And those are the classes where I really had to challenge and uphold my beliefs in the face of that, because I will never compromise on what is true. And this harkens back to the first point, which is the genuine pursuit of truth will always, always be the number one priority in your life, your number one principle by which to live. So if anyone, professor, someone in a position of authority, ever gets you to compromise on the truth, not your truth, not my truth. If they ever get to say that 2 + 2 = 5, or the sky is red, or that there's more than two genders, you have a duty, you have an obligation to stand up and say no. Because otherwise you're not a man. And I think that's what being a man is all about. You have principles. God gave you a backbone. God gave you a pair of balls. Use it. Use it. Don't bend over for these people. These people are delusional, and that is how you're going to understand and appreciate the truth, is because I often got into arguments with people over these basic principles, the notion of two genders, and that their falsity, their delusion that they try and force on other people to believe, it will always fall short of the truth. Always. Because science doesn't agree with it. Science dictates. It doesn't suggest. Science dictates. In fact, truth dictates. God's design dictates that there are two genders. And we know that based on chromosomal structure. We know that based on physiological structure. We can look at brain patterns and observe stark differences between men and women. So if anyone tries to hurl lies at you, I believe I took it upon myself as a moral obligation to denounce publicly these people, because they don't deserve to be in a position of power if they're going to abuse it by forcing people to accept falsehoods. Because some people genuinely don't know any better. And I've been there. I have been there. I was asking these questions. What if I'm wrong about there being two genders? What really is truth? Some people are on different paths. Some people are at different levels of that path of trying to figure out what is true in this world. Is it my truth? And the only reason we're so messed up in asking these questions is because we lack strong men to tell us, no, this is objective reality. If you go against it, you're going to have a hard time living. And people just don't figure this out. So they end up being miserable and forever stuck in this cycle of believing my truth. And because they're living in their delusion, they're missing out on reality. They're missing out on what it means to actually live, what your actual purpose is on this earth as a human being. So be the best student. What does that mean? Stand up for what is true. Ask hard questions. You be the best student by sometimes, if you're assigned work and a question comes to you that really you want answers to, try and relate that to your course. Try and figure out a way, okay, I want to know more about this. This really interests me. How can I connect this to the course material? And maybe I can use the course material to try and answer this question. Not only are you going to be more invested in answering this difficult question because it's something you're genuinely interested in, but by rising to this level of challenge, I've had nothing but success. I've impressed professors by coming to them after class, when they give out assignment guidelines, and I say, I want to answer this question. Can you help me figure out how I can answer this question in the context of this class? And sometimes they'll say, well, I don't really know how you can go about that. And then the onus is on you to either figure it out and answer it on your own, separate from the class, or figure out a way that you can answer it in the context of the class. That's hard to do. And sometimes they'll help you. One of my professors in university, he is a standout professor, and I still keep in touch with him, and I'll be keeping in touch with him for a long time to come. My first class I took with him, it was an intelligence and espionage class. Very interesting subject matter. He's very well versed in the intelligence communities in North America and shared a lot of very interesting tidbits of information in this course related to getting into the field of intelligence and espionage. And for one of the papers, I wanted to investigate the JTF2 in Canada. I wanted to know more about them, and I wasn't really sure how that would connect to intelligence because they're a special forces branch of the Canadian military. They're not, I don't think they're considered intelligence like CSIS, or like in the US they have the CIA, central, obviously. And so he was instrumental in helping me put together this paper, and it was a very challenging topic because so much information on the JTF2 as a secretive organization, a lot of the interviews and information on the internet is scrubbed and censored. And that made writing it very difficult. But I was able to find enough information to really put together an interesting paper where I learned not only a lot about distinguishing, okay, how is JTF2, how is the Special Forces related to intelligence, but also how is it not? Where is that disconnect? And you learn so much more. You get so much more out of answering these sorts of questions that you're deeply invested in. That's how you become the best student. You really have to take your learning seriously. And by acquiring these skills and that knowledge, there is so much you can do with that in terms of giving back, because you're going to have a deeper understanding than had you done something that mattered less to you. And you're going to succeed a lot more in your learning by taking these more challenging questions, because when it comes to writing exams at the end of the term, and for your assignments throughout the term, you've been focusing on answering these hard-hitting questions. Well, now the ones in the exam, they're directly related to the course material, so they're much easier than the harder questions you were tackling throughout the course. You're going to do so much better on exams because the material is straightforward. If you know the material and you can apply it to some abstract question you had, how easy is it to apply the course material to answering a question directly related to the course? You've already gone above and beyond. You've already proven that you understand the material and worked with it and manipulated the material in order to answer the harder questions. So applying that to the course material, easy. So you get the best of both worlds. You become the best student by learning the most, by getting the most out of the course. Because you're signing up for a course, what? Because you want a piece of paper at the end of it? Because you want your degree? No, you want to learn. Soak it up. Soak up that information. Make something of it. Even if it's a really crummy course and you're learning material that you don't really care about, even if it's just a requirement for your degree and you have to get through it, find a way to get value out of it. You're paying for it. Get value out of it. That is how you become a fine student. And you're going to enjoy it so much more. So much more. And then you come home and you're excited to share the things you're learning because you're challenged by it. You feel like, okay, I'm able to answer these hard questions. I want to share this with people I love because this is something that is amazing. And I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I'm trying to be able to explain this to people. You get so much more out of it. Try and be the best student by learning the most, by applying yourself the most. Participate. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. You're paying for it. That was enough motivation for me. Just the fact sitting there, okay, why am I nervous to raise my hand right now? Should I be nervous? No. There's probably a couple of people in the class wondering the same question. Or if they're not, by the time you ask it, they're thinking, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I think of that question? Sometimes you're going to ask stupid questions. Fine. You're paying to be there. Sometimes you're going to ask stupid questions. That's okay. It's part of learning. So be the best student. Never compromise on truth. Hold to your principles. Hold to your values. Participate the most, or participate a lot, and meaningfully. Don't just try and throw words in there. Really add insight. And this comes with practice. When you start doing this, it's going to be hard. And what you say you might think is insightful, but then by the time you try and say it in front of the class, it might come out as a bunch of word salad. But that's okay. The prof is there to help you organize your thoughts. They're there as a support. They should be, at least. I've definitely had instances where they were not. They were adversaries. But when the prof was an adversary, when I asked a question, I still learned a lot. And I won at the end of the day, because when they took on the adversarial role and tried to push back against my question, my intellectual inquiry, the reason that I signed up for these courses, those professors got slammed. They either got slammed by myself, because if a professor ever gave me flack, you best believe I'd arrange an appointment to meet with them one-on-one and ready to discuss why their behavior is the way it is. I'm paying to be here. You're offering a service. So the third thing that I learned in university is to make the right connections. This not only goes for friends, and I can't stress enough, choose your friends carefully, but also for professors. In my second year, I didn't put much thought into which professors I had. All I knew was I needed to get this course. It had to fit in my schedule. The professor is what it is. And through experience, I realized just how important it is to pick the right professors, especially as you go later on. At the beginning of your university, you don't know a lot of the professors, and you can't exactly go by what people say, because if someone dislikes a professor and they tell you that, the reason they dislike that professor may be the exact reason you like them. And they've just given you this false narrative of a professor and ignoring all the good qualities because there's one thing they don't like about him. So try and expose yourself to different professors in the beginning when you're still learning, and as you go later on, pay attention to the professors who go the extra mile to help their students. Pay attention to the professors who are experts in their field. Some professors are boneheads. It doesn't matter what faculty you're in. I started out in sciences because I wanted to be a surgeon, and I had a fantastic microbiology professor and a second level biology professor. And by having those professors, immediately I saw what separated them from my really bad chemistry teacher and my really bad biology 1 professor. And learning, okay, this professor's good. What makes them good? How can I be more like this professor? How can I understand things better thanks to this professor? What is it they're doing? And the best way to answer those questions is to talk to them. They're there for you. They're supposed to be, and especially the good ones. It's funny because the bad ones, they are the ones where you really get the feeling that, okay, they're not there for me. They're there just because this is their job and they have to do it. So there's no point in talking to those people. But the really good ones, the ones who are true experts in their field and know what they're talking about, and they excel, and it shows because the way they teach, the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, it's so easy to spot someone who knows what they're talking about and is really driven and passionate about what they're talking about, what they're doing. Those are the ones you want to talk to. Not only are you going to get the most from them, but these are the ones where if I talk to them after class and I ask them a question related to the course, they are thrilled to talk about it, because you have to think in their position. Most students are there not because they care about the course, but because it's a requirement or it's an elective and they're just trying to get through it. If you show genuine interest either in them as a teacher or a professor, or in their subject of interest, their field of study, the thing that they're an expert on, the thing that they're pouring their life into, they're always thrilled to talk about it. And outside of the classroom setting, they are going to give you so much good advice, information, and knowledge related to that subject. Because if they can detect off you that you're showing a genuine interest in them and what they do, just watch how they talk to you. I've had 1 hour long conversations in the hallway after a lecture where I tracked down the prof and I asked them a question related to the course. And just by asking a question, they talk, they share things. Now I have more questions. And then I realize, okay, either there's more to this course than I understood at first, or wow, if I finish this course, I can go in this direction. I can do this. This is going to open more doors for me. They can offer that advice. And they're the people that you'd want to take that advice from, because they're in the game of university. It's not like listening to your parents or listening to your friends who graduated. These are the people who are working there. They understand it. They're boots on the ground. And there's a lot you can learn from these good professors. There's unfortunately not a lot of them, but there are some. And if you can find those good connections and reach out, they could be lifelong friends, mentors. There are a number of profs that I plan to keep in touch with as I proceed with my career. And I'm not even looking at getting into politics. I've been given, they've offered to be references for me to, if I decide to pursue a career in politics, which I could do another video on why I'm not planning to pursue a degree in politics. But there is so much good wisdom and knowledge you can learn from them, because they are experts in their field. They're adults. They usually are in a much more progressed level in their life than you are, and they can kind of walk you through some of the challenges you're facing, especially related to your career path. But also just, they're human. They've been through what you're going through. They've been through the hard university path, and there was probably things in university that they hate and they think that sucks. And you can talk about that with them, and you can come up with ways based on those conversations to push through those roadblocks, to push through those obstacles, to overcome them, and to excel. So I promised myself I'd make this video and post it after 10 hours of recording, and I am at 10 hours approximately. So this is a note to my future self that, okay, we're going to post this, we're going to get this up. If you stayed this far in the video, I thank you. This was a long time coming, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts and your feedback, and please tell me what you've learned in your university career, or if you're thinking about going to university, or if you're going through high school right now. Talk to me. Tell me what your lessons learned are, because we can learn from each other, and we can guide each other closer to the pursuit of truth and making new connections, making new good connections. And at the end of the day, we can become better individuals and better students, better life learners through doing this. So thank you, and we'll talk soon.